When people want to learn how to protect themselves, they often think about taking boxing or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But which one is truly better for real-world self-defense? Which is better for self-defense, striking or grappling? Let's say you're a beginner and you had to choose between two martial arts schools in your area, and one is a boxing gym and right next door is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu place. Which one should you go to if you wanted to start learning self-defense? There are pros and cons of each, and to become a complete fighter, you really need to know some of both. But let's look at each one in terms of pros and cons. Let's start with boxing. What are some of the pros? Well, for one, 99% of all fights start on your feet, so you're naturally playing to your strength. Two, you can end a lot of street fights quickly with just one or two good shots to the head. And that's really what you want to do in a fight, is end it quickly so you can get away. Three, against multiple attackers on the street, you always want to use striking. You never want to go to the ground. That's the worst place to be. So if there's any chance that you're fighting more than one guy, or if you might have friends that are going to jump in and start pounding on you once you're on the ground, you want to stay on your feet. And that's where boxing and striking will work to your advantage. The fourth is that with boxing, you can practice alone, anytime, anywhere. You can work out with a heavy bag, or you can simply do shadow boxing. You can't say that about a lot of martial arts, but boxing is terrific for that. And whether you're dealing with COVID restrictions or whether it's hard for you to get to a gym sometimes, you need to practice a lot to get good at anything. And with boxing, you can practice anytime. And the fifth pro for boxing is that it's easy to run away. If you stay on your feet and you know how to move and you decide you've got to get out of there, you can bolt. If you're on the ground, that's very difficult to do. So let's look at some of the cons of boxing. Number one is that when you practice, there's a high risk for concussions. The only way to truly test yourself and see if you're getting better is to do some active sparring. And you've got to wear a mouthpiece and a head guard and of course boxing gloves. But repeatedly getting hit in the head is not good for your brain, and it can cause a lot of brain damage or even concussions. So it's hard to practice boxing full strength without possibly exposing yourself to injury. The second con for boxing is that about half of all real fights end up on the ground, either in a clinch with some guy or actually wrestling on the ground. And that can be really bad news for you if you don't know how to fight there. The third con is that you can really seriously injure somebody or even accidentally kill them with a punch to the face. There are plenty of documented stories where two guys just got into a regular fight and one guy slugged the other guy, and for whatever reason, the other guy maybe got knocked out, fell down, hit his head on the curb, and he's dead. I mean, that's a horrible thing to happen, and there's a lot of legal ramifications for that. So the problem with boxing is that it's kind of an all or nothing approach. You're hitting somebody in the face, and anytime you do that, you can cause serious damage. Not only can you cause damage to the other person, you can also injure your own hands. In a street fight, you don't have padded gloves, and it's very easy to bust your knuckle, to break your fingers. Those things happen all the time. The last con for boxing is that it's kind of an all or nothing approach. So let's say you're in a school fight and you fight back to defend yourself and you give someone a bloody nose, or you accidentally break their jaw or cut their face. That looks really bad, and there's a good chance you're going to get suspended or expelled. I know in some schools you get suspended no matter what you do if you defend yourself. But it's just not a good look if you bloody someone up. It's going to make it look like you're the aggressor, like you're the violent person, and you may have to pay for that. So let's look at some of the pros of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or grappling. The first is that BJJ was specifically designed to help smaller, weaker opponents defeat much bigger, stronger opponents. And a lot of times in the real world, you're going to get picked on by a bigger guy. So it's not always the best thing to try to square off and throw punches with this guy. He may have a longer reach, he may have more strength, he may have a weight advantage over you. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really kind of strips his advantages away. By taking him to the ground, you put him into your comfort zone, and that's where you can beat him. A second pro is that you can neutralize your attacker without actually harming them. So let's say you're in school and someone starts a fight with you. If you don't want to punch them in the face and get in more trouble for doing that, you can take them to the ground and just kind of neutralize them so that they can't hurt you, but you're not actually hurting them. And this also applies if you get into a fight with a family member, or a woman starts a fight with you. You may not be in a position where you want to punch this person in the face and cause serious damage. You might just want to hold them and subdue them so that they can't hurt you anymore. Maybe wait for them to calm down. And grappling is excellent for that. A third pro is that if you are a student, you can enroll in a wrestling program and you'll learn a lot of great grappling skills for free, which is a tremendous benefit. Another pro with grappling is that if you go 1v1 against a boxer, you have a huge advantage. We've seen from a lot of fights in the UFC over the last few years that if one guy wants to stay on his feet and the other guy wants to take him to the ground, the fight is going to the ground, and that's where it's going to end. If you're a decent grappler and you're going against someone who knows how to punch, all you have to do is slip that first shot and take him to the ground, and usually they don't really know what to do when they're down there, so it plays to your advantage. Another pro is that you can practice full strength without a ton of safety equipment. With boxing, you need mouth guards, you need padded gloves, you need headgear. But with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you really need minimal safety equipment. In fact, all the rolling that you do on mats, which is your sparring, it's done without that much safety equipment. So you can really practice a lot and practice hard without the risk of that serious injury. A final pro for grappling is that you can catch your breath in a fight. If you've ever been in a real fight, you know it's scary, you know you lose your breath very quickly, and it's really easy to get winded. But with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can grapple your way into a position where nothing's happening, and you can catch your breath and decide what you want to do. And that can be a huge advantage. Some of the cons with grappling. First and foremost, it's bad against multiple opponents. If you have to face more than one attacker, or there's any possibility that the other guy's friends will jump in, you definitely don't want to go to the ground, because you'll be a sitting duck and one of his friends can come over and punch you in the head or stomp you in the face. It's really bad for you. A second con is that in the real world, you might not want to be on the ground. It might be hard pavement, there might be gravel or glass, there might be a curb. You can really injure yourself if you go to the ground. A third con is that when you're grappling on the ground with someone, it's very hard to see if he pulls out a weapon. If he decides to pull out a knife or a gun or a box cut or something like that, you may not even see it, and you're going to feel it before you saw it, and that's really bad for you. At least with boxing, if you stay on your feet, you can see something and run away or do something else to prepare for it. A fourth con is that on the street, if you assume the guard position, which is when you're lying on your back, against a bigger, stronger guy, he can lift you up and slam you into the pavement, which is something you can't do in the sport. But in a street situation, people do whatever they want. And the fifth con is that if you're grappling against a dirty or a determined opponent, he can gouge your eyes, he can bite you, he can hit you in the balls, he can do a lot of things that you're not used to seeing when you train with your partners. And that can put you in a really bad position. Ultimately, to become a complete fighter, you need to learn some of both. Most fights start on your feet. You can usually end a fight with some good hits, and against multiple attackers, you have to stay on your feet. So some good striking skills are essential. But just knowing that there are times when taking a guy to the ground is probably going to be better for you, whether it's in a school fight or whether it's someone you really don't want to harm that badly, or whether it's a guy who's a really good striker or a guy who's much bigger than you are, those can all play to your strengths if you're a grappler. So you really want to learn some of both.